I think many of the liberal Supreme Court justices would be absolutely horrified, by the things that are said today, and particularly horrified by what is happening and what is being taught in our law schools. Which I interviewed Floyd Abrams, who is an iconic First Amendment scholar, lawyer, and a liberal, who talks a lot about how the concept of the First Amendment as being a bulwark against the government has now been turned into, and is viewed in progressive legal policy as being an impediment to implementing progressive policies. So it's a radical transformation of this view. And so the people who are coming up to the law schools, that this is what they're being taught now. They are no longer being taught about this idea of untrammeled free speech and that you have to protect the worst speech, and instead it's supposed to be used to protect marginalized groups from being insulted.
Well, the tactics and techniques that you describe that in essence result in people either self-censoring or being censored from certain types of thoughts and opinions, why do you think that is so often successful, especially in the past couple of years, in a country like America? How come it works?
Because I think people, for the most part, they want to be left alone. They want to work and raise their kids and spend time with their families and live a peaceful life. They're not interested in getting in the middle of national cultural debates, and they're not interested in being part of a controversy, and they're in particular probably not interested in having their reputation smeared and possibly losing their job. And so I think that I interviewed so many people, and plenty of people who wouldn't go on the record, that people are afraid, that they are afraid to say what they believe because they see what's happening to other people. And you can't, one thing that some people have been saying to me who don't like the book is they're saying, free speech is about the First Amendment, and if you aren't infringing on somebody's First Amendment rights, then you aren't harming free speech. And this is completely wrong, and I don't even know why people think this or where they got this idea. It's true that only the government can infringe on your First Amendment rights, although I have to say throughout the book I do talk about the government infringing on First Amendment rights, like universities, public universities, who are engaging in unconstitutional sort of speech policing. And that is a big concern. But we have to have, if we have to always err on the side of letting people say what they think, because if we don't, then we are never going to have knowledge. And I interviewed, I quote Steven Pinker. He's a Harvard psychologist who talks at length about this. He's a huge free speech supporter. He's very alarmed about what's happening on the campuses. He uses the word authoritarian for what's happening on the campuses, and he talks about Karl Popper, the philosopher, who says, we have to, in order to have knowledge, you have to have conjecture and refutation, and that is completely predicated on free speech. Not free speech about the government, but just free speech that people can say what they think, no matter how crazy it is, no matter how offensive it is, no matter how wrong it may be. Somebody can refute it, and we go back and forth, and that's how we get knowledge. And if you take that out of the equation, we have no knowledge. What we have is a bunch of propaganda and groupthink. And so just for anybody who says the debate is over, the debate is not over, and people need to be able to persuade and convince people. And if they can't, and all they can come up with is name calling, then I would suggest they probably don't have a very good argument.